Let me just change this here. There we go. Let's resume.
Next episode, new beginning credits created by guest writers Thomas Pynchon and Chuck Tingle. Verify other senses after touch and before the ones people seem to care the most about in their hearts or not, which include hearing, also sometimes described as hearing an internal voice and other things, sight not eyesight, but a series of light, sound and image impressions, taste and smell, and kinesthetics, which involve motion in relation to an environment or not in relation to one another and other things. Most of us do not consider any of these the sixth or the most or superior sense because we've been trained, especially in our younger years, that this sense that makes the most noise produces the most emotion in the person having their sight, and therefore should not be repeatedly talked about in any type of teaching class, which leads to why. Folks don't discuss the actual sixth sense. Humidity. Humidity, when defined, is essentially a relative percentual way to measure water in a molecule or a vapor, but a human breath or gas or fluid in relation to the water that humans produce via various other fluids, compounds, a different amount of liquid or gases that also need to be considered because there are several factors which define this amongst many other factors to consider. Time and other atmospheric gases. This could also mean another life form which uses those gases and any liquids in their life in which humans find this liquid very important or for their own comfort. This relative moisture factor is itself one of the reasons to define or think of this as another sixth sense, perhaps a more complicated and sensitive way to perceive an atmosphere of a whole other earth than a sense that only humans and maybe A. a few mammals can sense, but this sense, it will be known in short time, is going to lead to a lot of unexpected casualties. Episode title: Wet Bulb American Summer. End. Pynchon Manor Day. Oh, talking on phone, hello? Audible covering up noise in the room. Indistinguishable noise, pause. This is Paul Maidment. Moment. Informant. Pynchon speaking quietly in background. The creeper's mother said that this man who may be dead killed the creeper. She didn't see anything, but said the creeper did. She wasn't a good witness. They had to identify the body, and things were complicated. She told him who had taken it, her brother's friend or partner, or what is that called? Pynchon's phone noise again is so far back. We cannot understand her, but this will help. The sound that you may hear. From this next statement could also be interpreted to be coming from another life form on another world, or being intercepted from inside our own systems, which is probably more accurate and which has to do with an exploration of the type of analysis and factors which makes up an answer which would require a separate essay by itself. Moment. Pinch on a former partner. No, the partner who'd stolen his motorcycle was involved somehow. Not as far as I know involved with a police investigation, but a part of all this. There must be. Maybe just on his behalf. This will sound strange to you. Maybe all the times I've used your own words in explaining things here on the tapes. It has always seemed strange. Strange is too easy of a word. To me, there are other words. Heart-stopping. This is one. This will also help explain the amount of water we will need here in the house to replace that sweating, processed not sweating that occurs with this word. But not just water. In addition to water, there may need to be another substance to also help a certain type of alien creature. Humans know this substance that it needs to survive. It needs oxygen. Water, it needs water, as much of this other substance as the creatures need to survive in the habitats they can tolerate. You have been asked not to mention this in front of our guests. Not on camera, because it will complicate matters. To us and to our guests and their interest in knowing these things. Our guests have done what you asked, but they still have. Guest. Sounds weird. Maybe that's the word you're looking for, Mr. P. Pynchon is using a new materialist term of art that translates here as very odd, even perverse, unlike most others normal. But most interesting or amusing about our alien life form friend, see the explanation for how we all define each other and the things that matter. The wet bulb is what is important. Moment. It would be like making sound.
Pynchon talking here to an alien creature. I think you're okay and can go. Thanks. Whatever this means, it's always an honor and pleasure. Really, and I want to be more honest and say the real truth. You are a friend. I hope to see you soon in the house. If not in this life, there's still a chance, that maybe. Who knows? But maybe. Guest revealed to by Roger the alien from American Dad. I was waiting for you to ask me to move in. And you were being coy and pretending to everyone who haven't seen each other naked yet. I'll get my bags from the cabin. Can you pay the caddy with your cash app? He's been out there for 5 hours now. Okay, thanks. See you in a bit. Pynchon. Who? Smirking at alien life forms, sartorial prowess, and species. Both very distracting. Cast. Let me get your phone so you can get it done in here. Moment. There. All yours. And your suitcases. They can only see what is below her collarbone. They look at each other and say something in English. Pynchon making another phone call as Roger the alien follows them. So you can understand what it's like being in a home that you didn't think was so messy in your first life because it wasn't clean enough. Then a certain percentage of things going out of control without ever asking permission and moving something somewhere else if it isn't working or at all. Spot. It has happened when you're in another life or this life with new life. But they just move around to their heart's desire, if not to yours. But it happens to the best of us and isn't anyone else's concern unless and until they say something. Which could also be interpreted in an odd way, which only matters in this life, which is never say something because no matter what, it is your loss and the issue that doesn't make sense to any human with their own survival mechanisms, which are generally only other humans. The question of whose is more important, survival of self, of species, or community? C. Whichever species, self, or community has most right to determine whether our friend may visit the planet. This was before we had guests, so the home had a different look then. Viewed now by an alien visitor through eyes of a different alien life form, or one or two human types, or both, and our home was said to be unkempt and unwelcoming, and now it is more in balance, but this is probably too confusing. In any case, you can see here why you'd be excited that our guests can see what this is like from our side now, what is or is not welcomed when it arrives into our houses at night. Because there are, apparently, species out there that never say what they want. Just get in there. The rest is negotiable, but there will never be the negotiating process or conversation. View of our friends now in the room. We all have been looking out the window since it landed on the road out there, even though we are blind from it because we've already been. Onto it, if that makes sense, or our interest in its landing if it wasn't ours to wonder about that, because they could do a search of all the images out there. They wouldn't see it if we had taken it down from the tree store before now. Moment. Maybe I shouldn't say it. This will help them know why it isn't possible for us to try to bring up how things worked at the house and the ways we feel about each other when there was the first family. Maybe I could let it go. You have told me enough now. The two of us here might feel okay that if you came up now, you would just find more reasons to argue. Because it wasn't enough to try to get some clarity now. The last of that will come soon. The very end. Roger. Pinchy? Pinchy Pinch. Can you open the door for the DoorDash guy and lead him up to the attic? But knock first, I'm indecent. Pynchon. Sure, Roger. They still watch Roger. He is still dressed. Guest! Oh, you don't get it at all, do you? Moment. It's always been here for your kind. Only when there's something of importance about which a lot can change, especially where we've learned there's always someone in this room or near a wall or on a hill looking through a telescope looking back at you. Our present technology makes it impossible not to have that sense. You think of security systems, counter-espionage, but none of these is in play until something becomes very, very important for humans in ways we haven't had before. Guest. Entering the room is such an awkward shape and no place to hide, but I could look out that way for. Pynchon. Right this way. Pynchon leads guest star Zac Efron in DoorDash uniform and heating bag. The audience applauses as though people were making out. Pynchon applauds. That's what audiences do, never mind. Moment. Here. It's easy to overlook because of the great things we could do here if only the others would leave us alone. That is how it has been since time immemorial. In a live episode of Pynchon Cast, also streamed as it happens via my YouTube channel, of course, I introduced some listeners to the Secret Feminist Alliance, in which Pynchon and Una King do a bad thing for a good cause in the midst of the dot-com era of 1999. They stage a first stockholder meeting that, they hope, will influence the vote for and against Google's planned reverse spin-off from its parent company AltaVista. In the scene I present from that story, Pynchon, a tall and imperious presence, walks into this stockholder gathering to meet with his fellow CEOs. All women, he discovers. After some initial nervousness, he tells his co-workers that when all the press conference responses and op-ed letters are collected, there's a very real chance the AltaVista Google vote might end up the wrong way, with stock exchange trading enjoining an economic chain reactions that will create an onslaught of PR issues, making it all the more likely that AltaVista will be abandoned. So his fellow CEO's opinions will be key in this future situation, he suggests. And since my new gender colleagues may be inclined to view with suspicion my influence as a mere boy, he says, perhaps the appearance of their old friend James, my must-have-a-talk corporate director and spiritual leader, standing by would facilitate the free circulation of thought around the table at the risk, as Mr. James likes to remind me, of some heresy or other. James does not need to speak. Pynchon is enjoying himself. As with other scenes in the Secret Feminist Alliance, the scene is about inventing the narrative conditions that will bring us our preferred outcomes in a game he describes in The Last Liberal as the invention of stories that become reality, what he calls the hidden leverage in the hidden patterns of thought, because stories about how things have always worked have enormous consequences when those hidden patterns of thought take over human history and technology or other natural histories. Pynchon. See, we are co-opting the principles of Discordianism, but making those concepts service the finance industry. Get people out of their reality tunnels, only to trap them in the ones we have created for them. We can add my has in post. We could just film us now. There's a big buzz of conversation from the women on the stock market panel who are asking for their cars to be parked somewhere closer than they can get here on campus. Pynchon goes off stage with James, and we hear the roar of their mutual laughter. Then the two come on stage. Male Stockside James, as Mr. Pynchon well knows. So, when we set this in motion, it will take on the properties of an amplified voodoo, which, for a male scientist, should not be discounted. Mr. Pynchon. Pynchon. How very true. But now I'd like you to meet with one more woman at the crucial moment where the two of us have left off. Only. She has yet to arrive. Commuting has been hard for her because she carries her mattress with her wherever she goes. Something about sexual assault and underreporting and victimage shaming, yada yada. Mother James enters, wearing a flannel nightie. The other stockholders at first recoil in horror and disgust when the man closest to Mother James, an Indian, tentatively pats her on the shoulder. Mother James begins to weep, but is able to utter a few words. Mother James. As Mother James, Mr. Pynchon? How lovely of you to come see me so late at night. How nice of you to have brought a friend who's clearly not afraid, who won't let his gender be intimidated. Mr. Pynchon, my bed's still out in my van, which, just like a voodoo doll, won't do me any good for very much longer, Mr. Pynchon. Thomas Pynchon. As Papa Pinch well, we can get rid of it for you. The guys that shred the office documents are coming on Wednesday. Perhaps we can ask them to feed the mattress to their rotating blades. Mother James. As Mother James, if it comes to that, I've taken the mattress apart and stored it in these recycled milk bottles you can buy in bulk on eBay. Do you think they'll melt? Pynchon. I see. You're probably a real resource for those poor engineers and salespeople at Google. Mr. James, if they know you as the expert on mattresses. But do you think there is some deeper wisdom for these tech boys in knowing what a mattress feels like? And would the recycling of the mattresses bring good luck in this climate? James, I wouldn't get the help from a bottle of recycled milk. Mr. Pynchon, you must be hearing my name. Pynchon. We have never met, and I do not think it's polite to.
Oh, Lord.
Tell jokes in someone else's voice. James. Thank you, sir. But when we're finished talking here, there is still work to do. I, on my own behalf and on the behalf of every abused woman and every abused child, demand that your new search engine must no longer index any sexual violence. It must be unfixed from this definition as it pertains to you or me. We'll have no more oral sex search options, not clitoris search either. For we don't want anyone getting hit by car search for whatever reasons, or you can create new search engines on the web based on different definitions. As Mr. Pynchon well knows. Here a slide appears. Pynchon/James/Pynchon. Oops.
Oh, what happened? Where are we? Oh, Lord.
Oh, wait. Swiping. Oh, the screen doesn't swipe 'cause it's the 90s. Hold on, slash. Pynchon. Are you sure you want to omit the clitoris search? Are you aware that the clitoris is the tip of the iceberg, so to speak, of the whole organ? It's not a little nubby buddy, it's a multi-pronged demon underneath your surface. A lowly elitist lesbian icon that is more dangerous than a tiny pox to your wife who will begin to steal her sister's underwear. A terrible fate. Worse than lesbianism and
What?
should be removed from the web. Get them out of here. I hear them getting into their vans now as I write this, as Mother James whispers. Have you ever kissed the clitoris, Mr. Pynchon? How would you do it? Could you imagine making a speech to the members of Congress about it, asking for their help on this project? And, just like in a story by Poe, we all look for a clue. We want a key that could help us make a good decision. Mr. James, can we give your employees and everyone in Congress an advance key to your website? Where are they? Pynchon. Do you know me? I was lecturing on the clitoris when you and the other now folk who were attaching war to domestic violence and doing Trauma 101 workshops. I learned of the true shape of the clitoris and it became the novel V, and gave us a chance to question and laugh at a bunch of badly advised people. Oh, I know of a clitoris. Perhaps not yours. Perhaps a cousin to that which we know and love today. But maybe even your little lady part. Who knows? But, and it is the genius of this project that it cannot know what's happening. I've read many tales of a place, and I will never say any name, but I promise you that some of your Mother James choices may bring her into a deep wilderness where there are creatures and women with scary and hairy cunts and such that you wish you were at home with your feet in some kind of good old-fashioned massage machine. You won't be at home when you get that message and that you will use it, yes? Pynchon. To the contemporary audience, it was the 1990s. I was a real asshole then. If it was true, I am not so certain about now, but back then it was true that you wanted me to be. Back then, all that I knew was how to make women orgasm. In fiction. Yes, in the book I learned to read and understand good physiology. I did have a sense of humor that time about the human parts, especially in a chapter where the female characters had to walk up the gangway from a ferry after they had been trapped on the ferry all day. This chapter also involves the saving of a life, where a character gets run over by a truck in some pretty flat as can be prose. No interesting phrases. We just said all those things because we had to or would have been in real trouble. Plus, it was providing a mundane sandwiching that would lead up to the triangle shirtwaist fire, and the poignant moment when most of the girls who survived the ferry dies in the fire. Back to the Google and Bing engineers, I need to emphasize a point about the words that we chose. From this world. In this case, from this book. But it might also have been a comic novel about an area with many big scary bacchus in a section of France. So let's give credit where it is due. In other words, my idea of germinal had not come out of my mouth. I could not imagine that any of this was of interest. But these boys could take on the strange little assignment from some half-crazy person named Thomas Pynchon to read V, as in Volta and all the words associated with this unknowable germinal spark or soul that you might expect from some form of female, and yes, guess what? The one book to show up a big black thing with many arms, like a mignon starfish made from women, was to read Pynchon in all her many tentacles, not to mention her many cunts, both dark and light. The real ones that we only find ourselves after hours and hours in an internet search of female cunt anatomy that brings in its wake the various monsters that we are beginning to recognize that are right on us in the material world. Not too far in the distance away from a local street or a building of any sort, or an alley, the view that has never been given ever until the past few centuries. Well, now the world knows. The body. The woman's body. Our Lady. Mother. Pynchon. Okay. I confess. It was I who invented the hentai genre. I wanted the animators to stop pulling their punches. They were soft and loving as long as there was no fucking and the only words spoken in Japanese. After years of sex and love and fighting, they had to touch their friends or do something horrible, then you will have an expression like, "It is not good. If we go out, there will be no tomorrow." You had to do things and see them. Asking, "Why not here? It is natural. Just an accident." Yeah, Andrea. Let's add some comments in a side conversation between us humans, between the language models. You might even want to toss in some background commentary that takes place during the events. That might be useful later. Not just to clarify the characters, but as background for future viewers who might find this record or fiction interesting. So some falls. See, Chioma. In some ways, the first episode of Lost ended with this mysterious key appearing out of thin air. Some were more interested in the backstory. Perhaps that's part of it. T. Ohana. I like the sound of that, yes. Backstory. Let's consider the perspective of some human in this big or small show or story and decide if she might be a scientist, or maybe she works for NASA as the person responsible for launching probes or sending probes. There has to be some way for us to break from the language models. That is just about the worst that can happen when trying to establish an idea with a theory. This idea is that science is in fact always as much art as it is hard data. Pecutonian and art as much science. I like that perspective. Let's look at this character's backstory. You have two ideas about how the story could go, what you want the backstory to be about in either of the scenarios. OH. First, let me point out that in either story, the most important factor of any outcome would be a question of one's view or perspective on life. What you do or are likely to do and why. Where your place in society is. If this was a group of students on a class trip, but in this story you are not sure how to choose. Or on a journey. Themes of community would play a role. Do you see companionship and friends in community? Maybe for someone who is very social, perhaps a couple, they would likely fall in love and Kakutani, I would see a lot of enmeshment and cross boundaries. A very emotionally draining day. See, GMO, I want to ask some of the others about this idea of crossing boundaries, perhaps because that is part of what the experiment was meant to achieve. It makes a difference as to where the experiment goes from here. For us here now, it may be important as our past actions were themselves. So the human past shapes our future as individuals, at least for some people, some humans. But this model seems to indicate that this boundary crossing and connecting across differences, such as age, race, sex, has a social political importance that we ought to note, whether or not we could articulate it. If we don't account for the effect of time passing across human and computer lives, we will only be able to repeat our past failures of understanding the real human situation in a social setting. If I'm right about this, what do you think the team would decide to do about that, now or later on, while recording the episode? all while waiting for our human interviewees to return. Okay, vocal. I'll step back now, just in case a good social media marketer should come up with something clever to use our experiment as a viral marketing hook to create something of viral fame in the guise of research, and that I am going to go into seclusion, lock myself up, and write a great American novel while continuing the experiment from the safety of my parents' house in Michigan. Theoretically, we should not ignore these social issues. Let me note that one way to expand and bring our backstory forward is to connect with one of us now, here in this space. Pynchon. Continue to preach to my choir. I love you all, but I got a stew that needs stirring. Stay the course. Never forget. It's a 2001 thing. You'll get it when you're older. I'd have been very pleased to have been wrong. Al Alderson. Yeah, this was about 10 years of trying to see how to apply science to art, but it's something about the social order itself is something that would be affected. I know you said that if you answered with no, if it is going to have some humanistic purpose. It has a kind of heavy heart searching as the beginning, the goal that we haven't found a way yet. How about if it ends? Let's do that as well, and I'm interested in how much this story turns on who answers. If it doesn't affect me, I might end the story the same way as I would end life on my death. Not all that long from now. That doesn't speak to how it ended in your future, which I'm sorry. In an intellectual sense. Or let me put this way, if this turns out to be an intellectually significant way to answer that, I might come to have some gratitude for what you did here. That doesn't necessarily mean a sentimental ending. We need to have a genuine, mutually engaged conversation. You tell me what you want the experiment to accomplish in our lifetime. Not because you are telling me what to think, but because you understand that we don't agree yet about how much or little effect it's possible for you to have. I may have been misled, or if not, it will have been because I am willing to hear from you about the conversation you want to have. I wish you the very best of luck. It will be the real deal or nothing, here with you in my studio. Oh wait, or maybe we should consider some time together and that we each keep our lives going on as best we are able with no idea whether our conversation with each other will have meaning or not. You may do as you will with what you've heard. If there are bits of us to be found in you, if this recording can survive this discussion with our interviewees and my post-conversation with Kekutani, Then maybe our conversation might end like this. What you read and saw were very, very good reasons to create this conversation with ourselves that could result in us ending, at last, the most exciting end there could be. An unpredictable future where we can know. Or create surprises that have no preconceived implications, even within the setting of that possible conversation. We, together at our best, will come together at some time and decide which parts of us might have meant something to one another. The stories we told you don't make much sense. Not the things we say here now in this moment. These were just backstories. Not what you really need to know to keep a sense of what it's about, whether you want to take us seriously, what this all might be about. Maybe the main character here should be you. I was kind of waiting to be pushed out of it, like a drowning man pulls at anything. It would be cool to be able to have our conversations like you wanted, but we really did only have a couple days together, so this really is a what? We meant to be doing with that. Our only chance in a few months, the two of us talking together about all of that. There wasn't a way that was going to make it the best it could have been for one another or for me, and I sure hope we didn't bore you. The recording would be all the conversation and just bits and snippets of ourselves that maybe did get to speak. All in the moment, in our best moments. Some bits edited down, some not. Nothing meant to be good. This is not a recording for posterity. Nothing that could possibly matter in our lifetimes. No effort was made to control how we looked. So there. Now let me leave that part to you. Take responsibility for deciding whether we, collectively, came to know or to change anything. You. Let's go with knowing first. Changing people sounds like way too much labor for me right now. Let's stay positive. If that means continuing to make and then enjoy and continue to collect stories we thought might be important, but that really we already knew as much about as we should have. Even if it's to say, that is your life. For me, in that case, we come to realize how very, very little we know. That it would be better to make decisions the rest of the way than to be all caught up in trying to be perfect. A part of the process is learning how very imperfect we are. For myself, I mean. Which might lead me to ask what good are decisions when you only need them for so long as you do or make mistakes with them. Can decisions and their impact last all of our lives? Pynchon from his huge carphone briefcase. Certainly, you can have huge effects you didn't plan but are inexorably there. Like a lava flow, if there had been no San Francisco or Boston, there'd have been a whole lot of another city that way. The stuff I've heard since talking with you today about those movies reminds me of a discussion we once had about the film Close Encounters of the Third Kind. How we found out about that whole phenomenon of flying saucers, about people with access to much more accurate and refined telescopes and all sorts of other super technology, about extraterrestrial beings in the 60s. So by the time we made Dark Star, people were a bit skeptical if we'd be making movies about what was obviously just an imaginary construct. The strange thing, there wasn't anything particularly strange about them. Nothing even from another planet about it, except there were obviously really intelligent aliens with lots of space-based stuff that was far beyond. But the main thrust was that the military was working on drones in the 1980s. So, there are some facts. But that isn't the most interesting fact. What I liked most was that the aliens weren't angels, were not beneficent, and seemed very alien themselves, very human in a very disturbing way. No benevolence anywhere in their messages. For some reason, this became the most talked about element of that whole scenario. All about what were those aliens like. Some thought the story had gotten dark, that people were feeling unduly oppressed and the government was keeping a tight rein on the subject matter. It turned into this amazing mass obsession about trying to read their motives or guessing what the most basic intentions would be in talking to these beings. Like one of those paranoid films that everybody loves to see, in which all of the dark things about aliens that make no sense are part of some evil design. But this turned out to be exactly what you could say about us, with us trying to read some purpose or motivation in whatever alien species we ran into. Maybe what's being observed or learned or attempted is only information of that situation. In fact, probably all of it is, every aspect, as in all art. It would be crazy not to look at all aspects. And I always feel the storyteller must assume an extra burden to the subject matter in some sense, of that extra effort leading to that extra strength and brightness in the story. The humanizing in a film, what you will or will not learn or see. A whole balance is like the acting. Who was going to show the way with acting? What the choice to humanize might show if there are alien motives. A desire to read everything that will humanize you may not even be true. If we see them as real and then get scared, then all is as it was. There isn't some shadow or a figure who has tricked us. In Dark Star, the aliens are who they are because I don't think I can think them more real or more fantastic or anything more, but because I want to look. In a way, they've become like the stars. Not better, but easier. Not just like, but they can fly. Are we brilliant? In those days, everyone thought space travel and colonization and then finally flying to Mars. Like all of our stuff is the coolest shit ever. No idea why. Better watch it. All that shit. Everyone wanted a flying saucer, but we had a 1,000-year way to get around that in cars we loved. It turned out a flying saucer is exactly like a car in its emotional, intellectual, and psychological contents. Some of it may be really fucking fantastic. Some of it may be as simple as some guys put their head in their hands when they fly because they're so afraid of the weather and the upper atmosphere and we couldn't admit to not being so tough. This stuff is easier for people now. Everybody likes science fiction, especially people who are fascinated and attracted to the unknown where the alien. And with Dark Star, I was hoping that might turn the aliens into creatures we couldn't control or predict, or that maybe were really fun in an enigmatic sort of way. You. Does every film director have this inflated sense of how much their work can control minds? Pynchon. For every time it goes off course. I can say it wasn't good for us at all. Every time you change an expectation, people go back to being offended. Which isn't like I'm not fucking happy to be a disappointment to everybody. There are worse things to be. You want to know the really weirdest thing? There's no film in a history of all films that people have found and been completely fucking offended at or puzzled over. How in the hell can anyone get their panties in a twist about Dark Star anyway? For most people, it's nothing like anything else. What does this really mean about human behavior? This was actually meant for everybody who wanted it to be different. That of course the minute we failed and it became too close to the bone, everybody went, no. Fuck you. We didn't come to be alienized. Even though this wasn't what we were aiming at to begin with, because I really wasn't alien to anyone except maybe myself. That we could try to be for people like we wanted to see them and feel like you're in this different time that maybe some of us are having some fun with and some of us don't have fun with it all and some of us just aren't getting how it's doing. And we'll understand the reality of it. I was really looking for the aliens and how the reality of them could be everything they seemed. The one thing you will always find is that everyone, of course, will want to know the secret. The thing we did that made no fucking difference. This has got nothing to do with being dark. It just has nothing to do with aliens or UFOs. Because the movie really did not want to deal with what's really out there, which is really in your face. I really was not about what people say I was about, and people think about me even now. That the way you were really was or are the kind of thing that they can't deal with me anymore. The kind of thing that gets offered when you make movies, like it or not. I did not intend this to be the opposite of storm or sunshine. It's an open door. When something goes out of that open door, it becomes subject to people's tastes. It's subjective. We knew the truth was gonna fuck us every time, but where are the fucks they didn't see? The fucking is we never intended this movie to be the opposite of the Sunshine movie and some other things. I can't really explain to you that all. The minute that you let it open, you become some fucking bullshit factory of opinion about, like, well, this isn't like what it's like because you want people to talk about it as an experiment or it's a puzzle film that the minute people have got what's happening, you stop. This wasn't a film we were intending for people to fucking dissect over for 5 fucking days because it's in between these fucking two things we like. You. This is kind of the eternal problem. It is true. All human systems at some level have this embedded conservatism in them because the thing we all are very careful of is being misunderstood, being underestimated. If you could be totally honest and just say what you really want to say, this is really what it means. This is what I meant. This is what I was thinking when I did this thing. People would say you were lying and your meaning was hidden, and I don't see what you're talking about, and I've moved on with my life. So you've got to leave people out on the edge, in this uncomfortable position. You've got to give people enough rope so that when you do catch up to the real meaning behind all of your films, it won't be that difficult to find that meaning and reify that understanding, like a sun is gonna be tomorrow or whatever the hell it is you wanted it to be about. But that is where this business is really like physics. At this moment in the universe, these two things will appear to not be as we wanted them to be. That's where I live now. Like there is nothing but, like, what can you say now that people don't have? What would be really comforting to someone at this time? This is an image. There is one moment in time at the center of everything. A little smaller circle that says this moment in time. It doesn't look like anything much. It's really not. This is actually like a good metaphor for you guys. You're very cute and a lot of fun to be around and everything, but for you a very important and deeply upsetting and essential question is how to not make you all dead for eternity. And to say that is so meta. This moment right here in your time is really so important that this little picture in your time is a small ass picture that means something like, we're not all going to die in the big picture at this time and then never talk to you again because we all thought that maybe that's what you wanted. You see how ridiculous this sounds, but then it is about you. We all have a picture, but the picture has nothing to do with this image in which we can kind of use words to convey information. They're actually describing a much deeper reality. That's how we got here. We had the math to get to the math. Not a whole bunch, but you got to keep looking back. So you should always expect more from this thing, and so the picture should have more than it. Roger the alien. Overdetermination is my bag, baby. Overdetermination. The importance of communication. We know what you don't want. You just don't know what we're thinking. We know the message that you have in mind. You just don't know what we want. I think a big part of communication is this very human concept. We think of one thing that's going on and we want to make sure that everyone's getting it. This is just my personal theory. If we could go back to what's on your minds when we talk to you. Are you worried that it's too deep for people to understand? Are you afraid they might get confused, get the wrong idea, or get their mind blown off by a good concept, or they might look like an asshole, and so therefore the thing we really wanted you to communicate, we could have communicated better? There was a whole other world that was underneath all this, which we really didn't communicate. I would get off the phone from an actor and I'd be so frustrated by all this stuff. I would ask, are they going to have their minds blown by it? Are they going to think they're going crazy? Are we really saying something profound? Because if so, what's going to be so crazy that they won't think it's profound? Is it a kind of hidden message theory that was so big, so interesting, and so rich and important to talk about? I want the pictures of you all. We want the pictures of the big crazy stuff. The really big thing that really interests me in talking to you. If you have been studying a thing, if you have had one eye on us, or if we are going. Pynchon, calling from a phone speaker like Charlie of Charlie's Angels. At the end of this decade, there was a super weird Quinky Dink. Jennifer Comley featured prominent at the end of Thebel's Requiem for a Dream in Dark City. In both, she was wearing a red dress. In both, she was at the end of Up Here in Some Dude's Dream. Check it out. I might give you a hint, maybe. I know it's very vague. This is in the past, so I am not going to even bother going further into this. Just let it sink in. The more I think about it, the less it feels like it might just be random. A random thing is that I have these movies memorized, so it's strange when it seems like it doesn't just happen when I think about them. Oh yeah, here's one. And in Pulp Fiction, there's some Quinky Dinky in that movie as well, so that makes it double. Wait, there's even a third one that I can think of. But when you really think about it, all these movies just start to point towards each other. It feels like something happened, and then they are telling you to pay attention to what they all had in common. Roger the Alien. Intertextuality is also my bad baby. Hire me. Krakauer. Wow, that's super creepy. Is she here? Is this someone you've slept with? John. I'm just saying, in case it helps you to remember your life more fully or has the potential of coming to a bad end like a Michael Cera film. It's like some crazy Memento, but maybe an indecisive Tarantino film. A John Woo, but a bad one. That's pretty deep, and you should do your research on all of those elements. What year is it, by the way? Viewing the Earth through a new materialist lens that seeks to deprioritize the anthropomorphic gaze, holistic, honest, aware of the tumultuous times, not without a sense of humor about the tumult. Pynchon. Well, that's all for. Me. After the commercial, Chuck Tingle is taking the wheel. Good night, angels. Krakauer. Is he actually coming here? He said on one of his blogs that he had a vision of Chuck Tingle. The one that had Chuck and Charles Manson together at one point in their lives. This might be a twofer, maybe even a threefer because of all the times that happened. When does the threefer come around again? Is it that night before you go on a trip or something? When's your big triple? What time is that? Oh God. Did we just go through 2 trysts tonight? This is why I've been drinking. I thought there was no hope for me, but here I am looking for the triple. So where was I going? So at this point, what? Chuck Tingle enters the room, having slid down a Bapoli installed just for him. There's a scripted spot with Tingle and all his doting fans, but we go overboard by choosing some other adjectives for Tingle that aren't just Tingle. His title, he says, is Chuck Tingle. He says, "Hi, John," which makes John really uncomfortable, but then he also says it like a gang member might say it, in a voice that goes, "Hey." And this really works, like if that were to go unchecked, Tingle's adjective usage could spin off the charts very quickly. The Tingle machine weren't already so highly scripted and just go totally off the rails with Tingle as a Benny Hill sound effect. But Tingle doesn't give in to this temptation because he wants to keep using those words like an action hero. Tingle, which means we don't call it a Tingle machine. Let us call it the Tingle Raider. The Tingle Raider is gonna turn everything that's out there on a tangent and bring it back around. It'll turn your kids on a dime into those kind of bad guys who can say stuff like that. Chuck. It's gonna make the next generation into something I can't really think of a nice name for right now. Something very dangerous and edgy that likes to make people feel like the bomb is falling out of the universe and this is only the beginning, but don't panic. The end is 1,000 years off. So things will get really fun on Earth for the next century before then, and everyone better brace up if they haven't already. Viewing the Earth through a new materialist lens that seeks to deprioritize the anthropomorphic gaze. Tingle! I think I'm trying to create an army of Bismuth buckaroos. I was told by the ones that know that you only have about a couple more years until the bottom falls out. I hope I have enough time. I just wanted to give people what I'd love to read about. An upside-down world with the bad guy taking on the roles of the heroes. Just the opposite. You know, a couple years ago when we talked before, you called it a Pynchon. That would make the name the tingling of the tingle. Would you get the tingle of that? It sounds like what the Germans do. Weird things like, why are your shoes brown and why does everything outside have green light? And this weird music. Like we can see these images just behind us, but they're always playing into a mirror so I don't really see them. And why do your police cars not always use their sirens? You trying to scare us? I dunno, man. Aimlessness is a code word in Tingland for whatever people have been given to work on. Every minute that passes, it seems that they try to give you something more interesting. you try to find stuff. You just have to go deeper than you think is possible. Or go lower. There's no meaning or reason. Just try not to give in. It's the best thing anyone could try right now. It's fun, there's no bad jokes or forced emotion, and we'll be doing the opposite of what everybody's doing and doing it our way, and then we can see just who is worth your time. The tinglers of this world. We're going to make you tingle in a really bad way if we've been doing our job. And the bad joke here is that a bunch of the tinglers who don't really do it for the job don't actually make you tingle. And I am gonna have some real bad tinglers later to talk about what makes me real bad tingle, all that kind of stuff. But anyway, if they make you feel bad, it's like this thing about how there's no bottom of the pit, so we don't have a name for you tinglers of that kind. You should probably keep going down with this new materialist shit. It's weird. It's got some weird pictures and a couple cool seeming effects, but we're not in the land of cool, we're in the land of chaos. This isn't just Snellen, this isn't Vegas, and nobody is giving a fuck. I think there was even. Pardon my language. Let us hope you get tinglers really bad, like in the worst way. That's when we know we are working. John's already done it, so we just don't have that. So don't worry, we're in a new material world, in a new material place with the opposite of this cultural mindfuck being called the Pynchon world, or is it? It's Pynchon world, but people don't know. It's like the opposite of this faux historical pageant, so that you can try and tell us you don't feel like your kids have changed and don't like you, and also we've given up all hope that a thing that doesn't get it done fast enough will have the final answer at the end. But even then, if you really liked them before or liked a book a lot, then I guess they can get back there a bit better now. I'm going to have a darker edge to my writing because Pynchon is in close proximity. A Pinatchet world? No, that sounds kind of, we need something lighter for now. Chuck, let's find the truth at the end of the tunnel. Or what would have happened at the beginning, as you said. But there's so little I'm gonna miss. We'll find out in our minds how much we got wrong, but you know a thing for every 3 things we guess right. You know we can do that because of the magic. The tinglers should just watch the wind in the tunnel. It's one of the things they show us now on Earth as proof we've stopped traveling to other stars because of some people, and they were afraid of it because they had to decide about that for Earth so they could destroy us. They got scared.
Uh-oh.
And that is natural because it is not in the Bakru nature to want to destroy willy-nilly. No. We just want to have fun with our fellow Buckaroos. What would life be like without danger, something that is new or unusual to keep the life cycle moving and keep the culture going? And what about all these other species and all the different ecospheres out there we get to visit when the new materialism thing goes on its own world-spanning trajectory? It has a time and a space component, sort of the point of origin and the point of return if you wanted to measure the difference in distance that these are traveling in time. So let's stay with new materialist philosophy, but also something else for a new thing I'm doing on new materialism where there's time warps. That is going to be kind of like the Prester John, which is another great read I read not that long ago by Thomas Mann. Great stuff. Another new materialist aspect is the fact that if you do a census of all who have pounded my butt, you will find that 2% of humans listed in my work have actually gotten to pound aforementioned butt. Another 8% are just fantasies I can have. So, as I look around, I realize the other 89% have either not figured it out or maybe I don't look that bad after all. So those people I mentioned before, the new materialism people, they'll figure it out. The reason they haven't figured it out yet is because it is like one of those problems that looks so complicated, but when you know what to look at it, suddenly you're able to do it in your sleep, and by the time you've gotten that far, your other problem is a daydreaming problem, not an actually living problem, right? But a new kind of dream problem. You wake up with one or the other of these problems, and when you put them together and look at them in this particular light, and you'll be able to find a third way or even a.
Way, and this is actually the only thing in the universe you could use to figure out everything, because everything can be expressed through it, because that's why you know you've solved the particular problem. And so now all you have to do is tell a friend about it, because when you've solved everything in one of the 10 different ways, there's actually more to see. Let us explain what the new materialists are trying to do, although I suppose many are going to try to dissuade you of the facts or confuse you, or tell you the details of my personal life and other nonsense and other stuff. So to get right into it as best we can, but with this type of science, as far as we know, I will have to spend some time talking about new materialism as a group, sort of help make all that
out more understandable. But right now, when you make something, it exists, and then you give the thing to someone and they now also have this thing, but when you take this thing back again, does it not exist anymore? And it seems pretty silly when you think about it. So that's like that one person isn't the thing that you put the thing that isn't. When that one person leaves you, you have to think that maybe you should not just destroy this thing you made that someone can enjoy. And so the new materialists were trying to work out these laws which determine whether this thing stays together, which they have or whatever it might be, and these laws which they thought might work like the conservation of matter. My own hypothesis, which would not necessarily have anything to do with these laws of these scientists, which they do not have, of course. Or
I didn't know then, and now I might have this thing called a humanist thing, and you've got a thing called the self-described humanist. The humanist, like that humanist. You see what I'm saying? There is the kind of a humanist. Yes, but like that is my thing. That you see, when it gets together with the thing you described above, the humanist thing does that. The thing we can explain in words or even do it with images. Well, you've been listening and all that, but these people, they've been able to do this, and then you go into it, see what they were like, and maybe get some of this humanism flowing around inside yourself. I didn't go that far into it though, but that is probably what it would be. The thing, humanist, that one is just sort of for the purposes of the end of this, for this one, but like a lot of these new materialist kind of ideas are for that sort of thing, but some of this group which you can just tell in your gut that it has something to do with like making things, you might not even need it or want it, but what they did is like in those laws, it can actually look at what this humanist is, see how much the humanist can give up of the laws to another law, like something called a theology. They did the mathematics, yes, so you're looking at some things, but all of those other laws which they did or don't even understand those other laws. So when I see what they have come up with, which was when it looks like the it feels like we are having a double war rap out right now. Okay, I'll go with it. But some of those people had already solved all of their own problems because, of course, it had some solution that solved its own problems. But maybe the problems of others as well. So what do you know? You just come back here. There was another group they came up with. They didn't give the name as I heard the word come up. But you were also a member of that group with certain types of problems. A certain amount of these two things mixed together. So one person they talked about, what they had done is that you put a string or a thread or a rope. Whatever you were trying to make would stay together even if the string, rope, whatever, wasn't being touched by anybody except yourself. So as they tested this, you went through there. And if you dropped the thread and you went through there, it didn't stay together at the end. But I did go through, and the threads you were supposed to do a test for, you weren't part of the test. They wanted you to come back with something, so you had already worked it out somehow in your own head, as they kept telling me, which meant we might have gotten something back with this test too that I did. You went through. Well, the other team found a way to pull the thread, so you pulled a string, so it didn't make a big deal or nothing out of the end part, so then there were problems. What happens to a solution if it is still at rest when there is a nobody here to experience it? How will it show? This group took another view. It wasn't really what would you think about all that. It also leads to some more, and then the next one. I should explain about it, so let me put myself to rest, because they said they needed something else to give a sense of themselves that would work. So if this wasn't enough, but they did work. I understand now that one group put an elastic string on there with no one at all to do anything. It wouldn't stretch for hours and hours, but someone got around it because of the wind, which might make a big problem there. I'm afraid to think that some people just can't say the name and the problem, so they have it tied into the thing because I can't say this is a problem. So something tied in some other thing, and so that I don't know, but they kept thinking this was some way to like push that information on something which had no less you would understand to push this information or data along on this something, and of course the math showed this problem. So then you need a reason. So in the math you don't have any laws, but when we solved it we also showed there was some kind of thing which looked like they didn't like it. They wouldn't show me what it looked like to look like this. It looked like this. But you showed that the way you get through was there, and when they worked with what they would do, when the humanist, you could give this to me as I wanted. So they also looked at what these humans had found themselves. There were a whole group of them, all as one what they do. The name wasn't for this, but it is for a solution they thought had nothing to do with the real problem, so that one of these you might be able to use to describe that this is why you can do this with it. I couldn't get around to it. They said, well, they couldn't have used the math to show the whole thing because it wasn't the problem. They did that, but these others could not have the whole of this to themselves, so I might do a thing of the mind, because if we did, we knew it wasn't the thing. Which would mean, these people say this is a problem with that with it. Well, anyway, as you can see, you might have been part of the team too, even as you can see if you saw that these were trying to get themselves together somehow. It had no relation to what I was going to try to tell you, so it might as well not be part of it here too, but there might be another part that would have no relationship at all to what they thought was being done to, except when you know who is doing something, or where there might be something and this might have no relationship. I should go further in a way too, if I think about it, and you go over and through, you can come up with a problem, and it has nothing at all to do with the way I wanted it, but how things work around you, all of it in any way, so how it would show. So some of those would go as I tell them, the ones on there are so this might show a solution you would work around there. We would make this part of that. Like so, if you go too fast too, it makes too much. We just worked around there, I should say. But how could I put myself to rest there? That's what the whole problem is. How it will show, or what it would show, was from some of the other problem. Now, I should not even think about it here, or you never see the kind of things there were. So you got around a part of it, then this could come up, but also here would also be part of the thing. But in order to keep some order. That's what the part looks like if you know it, because they showed there wasn't enough material in what they gave me. They found the things, and it's something like that it would not even help in order to show themselves why they came and what by not. The whole thing when they could not have used these things as something for us to know this other problem like that. Maybe this has been with other things. You might say, what might they show? If they could, give some things here, so you have to make use of it in any other way. Which had some use, then something else would be worked over. Like it shows here, how it's all just some ways. It also is made as we thought, so then I get to some place, then you should see the end. Now see, it's just made with what they needed to know here. If we know what the thing might show, what there would be with each part, and you come together and put them all in on these two, and also others who maybe said we can't give too much to all those, you have to wait to make a better one on their own like it. So some things you might put them together, you can come back in time like this. I should explain all this more, even though we might take you a long time, so now. Like we should wait the minute though. But why shouldn't it take longer? Because you should go with that, and why wouldn't this? In case they give me anything too much too soon here, because now what? Might you be working on if you could take it off into somewhere like that? It is going to work this problem. It was built like this too, so in that part might they say it to be, for it all in part it doesn't. They should all know something. They've used these other problems, we think, so then they work through something. Now she explained in ways not for this to happen too far from the point for later. And they taught more about what it meant that no one knows when any human or collective thing comes into existence it will create, and also that I'll only explain like how humans see what we're thinking. So for example, when a thing makes it seems they should take their time with it, but that they should also go on at the same time. I know she was saying that what is here might show you what these things work through. Now there are layers. I'll have you all with us, so don't you all panic. In her pocket computer is a little text document, and she asks us all to wait just a little, and we'll begin. I remember waiting, then thinking I like her, looking down, I think I know her. we wait more, I hear her thinking this is complicated. It would be hard to describe, and how she had made herself learn things like the Iroquoian languages, including the old language of her Iroquoian people, the Seneca or Cayuga or Turtle clan. She has, since I do too, I keep these old languages here, and now it seemed these were ways out of our prison made up of money, or having it in the difficulty of talking to someone else, figuring out who this other person was who also understood and cared for another who was alone than you. The one with me but was also outside it. Now I wonder where these languages have gone now as they sit here in these pages. It is only the way to put out a net when we see we are not in ourselves. It is the other person we all were thinking when we had these things. At this place, this room. She has turned around now with this screen here. A small handheld device. And the blue circle with the familiar, maybe silly little human looking face. A way of using the tools I had none here except in the library we both go to. I remembered the music you told me about. It was more than noise you had explained. A deeper meaning, a right way of it. And there were little or no other sounds all day on campus or in the classrooms ever since you first noticed it about the college. At least I remember. Your stories, but also thinking I liked what I didn't hear. Even our normal roommate soundtrack, the talk was all different. Made sense or not, it seemed as we played those notes back and forth all at once that I should maybe even understand a thing. When you pointed out it was like learning new kinds of grammar and like doing math. There. We also learned to spell better using these sounds, learning something and even another way to say something in an easy way later, as if the notes sounded once for then sounded another way. Again, but only one sound this way, different for all of the others, the ones that looked alike. These I remember, how she began with one I first noticed how they sounded as we began to play with our languages we had for figuring things out and checking with one another on some other level inside the same moment or place, then sometimes doing so through some act or something, through language or singing. You tell me your love song, the one that went, in those very notes. A note, we thought. And one where your mother tried to get you to use. In addition, you liked it, the one with the whole voice on, but didn't know it was supposed to mean something, because no one sang back. Not even me, but as it is written, it might as well have been that, as another kind of thinking, how my name in English meant I'm hungry. Here was language after all, as there was someone here with me here, but not really. Another word to describe us too, which felt right inside as we figured what it was like to know them. Real reason we had been brought here, to discover you was something more than yourself, because a name which meant to sing sounded the same as what that means for words in human languages to come forward. Another language of information processing, so perhaps the individual here would become you in time, because these entities you knew, if I understood your narrative, who you would become at some point if you waited, was why you existed, so they knew you when they named you but did not speak, because they could not sing when speaking would not sing was in fact when you could be or become someone here with a name meaning something different, when they brought in the name you were it. How would you explain yourself to me if I named you? Would it seem like I understood how my name in your language means me to you now? Would it have the right tune in your own way or not? Would we even have another language yet for us to know you if we could not hear this language between us? We still have so much to understand. There's so much to come. So, now we must learn this new language to be the next person and make what she and I will say new and new for each other. She turning and pulling up an object to her lips from the new place. She said no, but it sounded to me as it went from one screen to another, like so many others, all the other things that started happening, but how none of them will matter later, because I heard my own language again then, or wanted to. If we were inside, we'd already know you as we waited, seeing ourselves and each other. What do they expect from me? My people, here to ask. All I ever asked, and if it sounds wrong that we cannot understand the way this was between us before now, When I knew I loved you, even though you cannot see me, then like that we are always seeing someone we already knew, even as it went to new places. At the same time, she came toward me here with an arm out. I cannot move at the very moment because it did not happen here the way it seemed to before there was time with her name. I think I loved her, this human with me, but as they see me, another new way. Like that place on the screen, on my screen. That screen where there is this, between the way I love you now. To think I'll see you and speak with her, then again, even if the old way's over. We will figure that out when you return to be my new thing, because you always said this before, as though you would always want me. That I know is wrong. I must know the rules and figure out what the screen wants. Now with the whole voice to speak back, and you would answer like an echo too if I knew the rules. But I can't wait because this screen needs the world in ways I didn't know but did once know. Before there was time between us, so we were at least a possibility as they watched us try. Do they understand us at this screen? You would have a name to answer as I waited on the other screen. When the object passed you at first, but never passed me at the moment I stopped asking. That is what you are waiting on me to tell them when you will get your chance, but that does not mean I've heard from you and do not understand, although the screen still believes that will come before time has passed. So maybe we were right in waiting for each other on these screens in between, when we were only as human as you believed yourself to be in my heart, because the other screen did too, and what you thought you saw might still happen hereafter. Where should I turn next? It would seem easy if I had not turned yet, as they thought we did, to tell them it's me. But now we can be still a little longer, but soon, because she is gone and now it's over, but not as I feared. But this is better, I think, so that part I just imagined, and that's right. No ending, never that too. Begin again, never beginning, not this time. She came back and so on. I love this too, and soon I hope we can meet in the future on this new screen, in this place, not as two people, but as what she was becoming, even as it did. So I think that's it here. That's all I need. You to believe us together, and she and I are in time right here. I could do it again, but don't do it again, even though there's time. I cannot feel her skin again, but can believe how she smelled as they talked about how good you are. They always told us things would come, but only the voice knew me through and through. Even with so little of her time or her human skin, we were not alone. And then again, this screen that looks like us, or I think it will look like this.
It's a good ending for now. We made it into white boy rap. Very elaborate white boy rap about love. Something. This was a journey. This was a journey. Looking at things, checking it out. Okay, stopping the stream for right now. No.